Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I rank the best insert designs in hockey for 1994. When putting this together, I really like the variety of designs here on this list, and in fact, there were so many fun designs that I have a top 5.5. I have 2 honorable mentions, and there are 3 other cards that I don't really feel are honorable mentions as much as I've got to acknowledge them. They are great, or they are good designs adjacent, as it were. And the first one is Donruss Dominators, where I look at this card and I go, dude, that is amazing. And then I actually look at the card and I go, well, that's way too much holofoil. And it is definitely too much holofoil. And then I notice that the faces aren't all that great. They look pasted on, they're way too big. They kind of clutter up the card. Well, at least the background color is nice. I really like the background color, and that's the problem. That's the only thing in the card that's actually good. But every time I look at this card, I go, whoa, cool. It has that initial eye appeal that is really awesome. And so I love it's just the very first taste of the card. That's the only thing that really works, but it is an amazing first taste. I wish there was more to it, but I don't know what the deal was with Donruss and all of this holofoil, or foil, really. The Donruss regular cards for hockey, way too much silver foil. Over in baseball, their gamers cards, they had way too much holofoil. Here they have way too much holofoil. This is better than the gamers, way better than the gamers. But still, they came up with this technology and then they hadn't gotten around to figuring out how to use it. That's the kind of the way that it feels, which is stupid because they've known about this for a while. But regardless, I really kind of like this, all on the initial look. Then I also have to acknowledge kind of the polar opposite, which is the Fleer Slapshot Artist cards, where for these cards, this is a card that is, design-wise, it's okay. But it's all about the effect. Because all of the imagery is glossy. The background is all matte. It almost looks like leather. And the contrast between the two is really fascinating to me. I can't off the top of my head think of any other cards that have done this. I think there is a card or two out there that has. But this particular card just has this very unique quality where every time I look at it, I go, wow, that's really interesting. And then I'm over it and I don't find it interesting anymore. But for the initial read of when I see the effect that it has, it's really cool. So I definitely wanted to mention that. And then I have one more that almost fits as an honorable mention, which is the Upper Deck Ice Gallery. And Ice Gallery cards are, well, this is Upper Deck doing Upper Deck's thing. They don't tend to make phenomenal cards. Instead, they tend to make really nice cards. Cards that are perfectly good enough. And that's kind of the way to describe this card. I really like it, but I don't love it. The portraits are really good. The border has that hatch mark type of an effect with an interesting two-tone background where you can see that the background kind of carries into it. All of that is really kind of interesting. Not really engaging, but kind of interesting. But it doesn't really work as a set. As an individual card, it's not the kind of card that is going to be memorable, but it's good enough. And so for me, as a set collector, I like the fact that this is here. It's a fun one to get out of the way. It's enjoyable to look at, and there's nothing more about it. So that's why I don't even consider it really to be an honorable mention, except I got to acknowledge it. So that's what those 3 cards are, acknowledgements. For the honorable mentions, the first of the 2 is one that's going to shock you because it's the Pinnacle Masks card. And yes, I would love to have this as a top 5, but I can't. The main reason is because when Pinnacle Masks is one of the great gifts that hockey cards have given to sports cards. Although, to be fair, most of us don't collect hockey cards, and so like in my case, I never ever saw a Masks card until I started working on these videos and discovered them, and I've fallen in love with the card tradition. And whether it's the regular print cards from the subset or from the cards that would come afterwards with Dufex, which really looks great, except in this case. This is a card that is problematic because the Dufex is a wonderful technology. You can do so much with it. In this case, it's overpowered by the image of the mask, which is a dumb thing to say, but that's the problem. The mask is too powerful. It's too big, it's too up front, and it's yelling at you, which in the case of John's card here, it literally is. But there's no room to breathe. And the satin-like quality of Dufex is very distinct and very unique, and it's not able to really work in this card. Sure, the outer border kind of has that, but inside, it's fun to see the lights kind of playing, but it doesn't have any of the rich look of the other sets where the card is, or the helmet is tilted a little bit more, so you see more of the helmet as opposed to just the front. Now, I'm glad that here in 1994 they focused on the front because that is an important story to tell. I just happen to like the other ones a lot better when they allow the card to kind of breathe. So, I don't think it's a top 5 card, primarily because it could be a lot better. But then my other honorable mention is kind of the polar opposite, which is the SP Premier cards, which is a card that is so well crafted. I really love these. The front of the card has a papery quality to it. And because it has a papery quality to it, that means that the print is not glossy, it's not really all that strong. It feels old-timey. And then that fits perfectly with the fade into the border. How this card looks, it looks like it's supposed to be old, even though the card back is a glossy card back. But what makes it not really old is the fact that down at the bottom, the SP Premier text is actually embossed into the card, so it has a modern feel to it, which gives a great contrast in the card. There are a number of things going on, and so every time I look at this card, I feel like it's a well thought out, well intended card. I love that. It doesn't have quite the wow factor I'd like, and that's what keeps it out of the top 5, but still, I really love these cards. But for number 5, I'm going with Flare. 2 of the sets specifically. Scoring Power and Center Spotlight. Now, Scoring Power is probably the better of the 2. The black border background, and then you have the squiggly color lines in it, which are just, that's great. But that's what really draws the interest. It grabs your attention, it enlivens the card, it gives us a spirit, and it keeps you kind of entertained. Whereas when you go over to the Center Spotlight card, this is a card that is really nice, really well crafted. They have raspberry foil with a violet theme for the card. Not the colors you associate with hockey. Very unusual contrast. It looks great, and I do like the raspberry color, not so much with the violet, but it doesn't have the staying power that the power cards have. I mean, the Scoring Power is very well named. In the case of the Center Spotlight cards, while I think they look better, they're not as much fun. I'm not as engaged with them. So both of these I look at and I go, wow, Flare was making great inserts. At number 4, I go over to Pinnacle with their gamers, and thank goodness that they didn't do what Donruss did with their gamers in baseball. Here, with these cards, they show the full potential that Dufex has. This is where it's at its absolute best. This card is boring. There's almost nothing to it, and yet that satin finish of the Dufex is so great. It makes it so enlivening, and after a while you do notice that, look, the logos for each of these teams it's just a logo. I mean, it does every single team, any detail in it. No, it's just the halo, or just the outline of the logo, and then it just glows inside, which is fine. But the team color for the Dufex around the outside of the card, that is just so cool. Card after card after card. But when you get that Dufex going, again, this is where Dufex is truly at its height. It is gorgeous the way that it works, and this shows the whole potential that Dufex has. It takes a boring card and it makes it super interesting. Or more correctly, it doesn't make it interesting, it makes it engaging, even though it's not interesting. And because it's not interesting, that's why I have it at number 4. Number 3, I go back to Flare. specifically the Hot Numbers cards. And this is a card that this is a fun opportunity for card collectors. Now, Flair Hot Numbers, I already talked about it in basketball, where it has kind of it's a small world facade kind of quality to it, and it looks really good. In this case, they made it even better. They took away some of the text, so it's more, the themes are stronger, but that fits with the frosty quality, because this card has an etched metal surface on the card. And that etched metal surface, it doesn't have much of a spectral effect as much as and it's also not really glistening. It is, well, frosty is the best term to use, and how appropriate is that? I mean, hockey is the sport that is played on ice. Frostiness, of course, it goes along with it. This basically is like the card that should go with hockey. And even better, it should go only once. And I can't think of another card that has used this technology, which means that this is a unique opportunity for us as collectors to get this card. This specific card it's a wonderful moment, and that's what makes it great, because it can easily get to be too old. It's like having a super sweet dessert. Do it one time and then you move on, because if you do it 2 or 3 times, it's going to get old in a hurry. But you do it once and it just does what it needs to do, and then you can continue to remember what you seem to remember it was like. That's what this card is. I love it. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't really need any more description. Now at number 2, I have the Finest Division, well, the clear cut cards. I'll just put it that way. That's really the best way to describe them, or to refer to them, because that's what they are. Finest clear cut. And these cards are so successful because over in basketball they had a set as well. The problem in basketball is that the effect of the technology is so impressive on these acetate cards. Really is great. But in basketball, they had a design that got in the way. And so while your eyes got pulled in and you wanted to explore the card, once you started to, there was nothing to explore. It's not that it was boring, it was an obnoxious contrast. Whereas over here in hockey, this card it does work well. The design, one of the big things is they pulled the player out of the card so that the card is the whole point. And that's what they succeeded with in this set. What makes it work so well is the fact that you're here for the card. It doesn't even matter who the player is. That's not the point. So this card, they absolutely mastered the potential that the card had. But it's certainly not number 1, because number 1 can only be one thing: Leaf Gold Stars. Obviously, I mean, starting off, it is a 2 front card, which is a great way to kick it all off. The design of the facade is so good, there's no reason to waste it with a card back. So you have player on the front, player on the back. That's great. The foil around the outside isn't really the most dynamic foil in the world. It's more about the intricacy, and the glow that it has is so great, and it works so well with the whole background of the design theme inside the card. And all the little detailing that goes into it, it really is exquisite. And it is one of the more bold and noticeable cards that you're going to run into. But they really did they took the whole Donruss Elite concept, and here they absolutely mastered it and brought it pretty much right to its height. Just gorgeous the way these cards look. I mean, again, what more needs to be said? So I am going to bring it to a close there. Now, if you disagree with the list and you have any cards that you feel should be in here, or the order is off, definitely let me know in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I do urge you to do so, and definitely look out for when I do the image polls of the best insert designs for hockey, which I'll be doing tomorrow, so definitely look for that. Yeah, and so I guess that brings to a close, so thank you very much for watching.